Hi, so today we're going to be working through a frog skin camo technique, or camo painting. It's a fast and super easy painting. I'm showing off a finished model right here. This is actually a surprisingly easy to paint. Um, so we're just going to be going through this. This model should take us, considering the amount of steps, it should take us about a half an hour. You can absolutely batch paint these. This is all super easy, and it's going to only use, it looks like seven different colors of paint total to this entire model. So I'm gonna just get right to it and get through it. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna select our victim, which today is gonna be this guy. It's another U.S. Ranger made by Enemy Spotted Studios. This model came in the same pack as the one I just showed you. As you can see, I've already primed it, just basic black spray paint, nothing special. I tend to use the Army Painter black spray because I like the way it feels, and I do enough painting that I'm just going to stay with what I trust. And I just have it super glued to a cork. This is just so I don't have to put my hands on the model, and that'll give me a little bit easier control. Also, I have corks from drinking a bottle. Leftover cork from drinking a bottle of wine, so it's fresh and easy. I know a lot of guys do stuff like glue their model to the top of a old paint bottle. Really, it's doing the same thing, which is just giving you a place to hold when you work on the model. I like when I use the cork, I like that it's really easy to pop this guy off by just cutting a little bit under the feet. So we're going to get started with this. First thing we're going to do is lay down our base coat. For that, we're going to use a skeleton bone made by Army Painter's War Paint line. And we're just going to put it right in here into a dry palette. I know a lot of guys typically use wet palettes or would rather use wet palettes for paint like this. I live in Nevada where it's really dry, and I found that my wet palette dries out almost as fast as my dry palette does, and it's just another cost that I don't feel like I need. So I'm going to take a Monument Pro Synthetic 00 brush. Bristle, I'll do it side by side. This is how the bristles compare to it. I'm going to use this for my first layer of paint and base coating and whatnot. So we're going to take this bone, which is really just a khaki color, and we're going to go ahead and hit this guy, all of this guy's clothing. So what I'm specifically looking at here is I'm painting his pants, his jacket, his actual clothing. I'm going to try to not hit any of his war gear, and I'm going to leave his boots, his pads, and his belt, and all the other accoutrement he'd be wearing. I'm going to leave that off because I want to use that with a different color to give a little bit of contrast. So one of the challenges when you're painting camo in general is the function of camo is to break up the silhouette, which if you do camo right means that the model's not going to read like it should. So we have to find that happy balance of doing the camo the way we want to do the camo to get the model we want, but also not losing, or also making the camo, or finding a way to make the camo not do what the camo is supposed to do while it's actually doing what it's supposed to do, which is gonna be a challenge. If you think about it too much, it's gonna bother you. I recommend don't. The trick I do, and I do this with any given camo technique I use, is I do the clothing in the camo so that I'm showing off that camo and getting that camo effect I want, but then doing the other things that the guy's wearing and your model's wearing in stuff that's going to not be camoed. So I was talking to one of my friends who's much more into the culture, into the military veteran culture and about camo, and he told me that this guy would never, this is a paint job we're replicating, that this guy would be never wearing all that straight black with brown with the camo. Problem is if that's what's the case, then it's going to be a really difficult to look at model. So we're going to stretch our imaginations just a little bit and get into the mindset of I want to make a cool model and I want to do camo, but I also wanted to be able to read and just ignore that. So we are going to do this guy's war gear brown as opposed to doing it in the same khaki with the same camo. So a little bit on the back here. So as you can see, we've just gone through. We've gotten all of his fatigue, all of his blouse, his BDUs, all of that is now painted. And what we're gonna do next is while we're letting that khaki dry, because we're gonna be putting a bunch of layers on it, is we're gonna just go ahead and get that brown, and that'll get us our basic shape and outline set. Also, while we're doing this brown, sorry, I made a silly mistake and didn't clean out the dried paint from the last project out of my wet palette, or out of my dry palette. So, next thing we're going to use, same paint line, which is Armor Painter War Paints Leather Brown. This is one of my favorites. You can tell by how cracked the bottle is. It's a solid medium brown, and I use it for a lot. So it's one of my go-to colors. So now we got his basic khaki uniform done, we're gonna go ahead and give him give the contrast color, in this case brown, to all of his war gear. And I say contrast, but that's an incorrect statement, because both khaki and this leather are shades of brown that exist in the brown trees. These are actually complementary colors, but that's just getting unnecessarily into color theory, and we don't need to cross our eyes like that. That's not a requirement for today. Don't mind the sound of the meowing cat. She has decided that she's getting fed more than once today, and that's not going down. So we're just gonna go through here, and while we're doing this, we're using that same brush, which isn't the best brush for detail, but we're just doing some light pickups on the detail here. So, for example, the knee pads this guy's wearing have the straps that go across. Like, I could use a smaller brush, but I don't feel it's really necessary. Just gonna lightly grab the straps to bring the world of this model straight together. So now we're just gonna, now that we've gotten to his battle belt with all his stuff, we're just gonna hit all of it. This is going to be pretty easy. And the nice part about this, guys, is we're actually going to use this brown as one of the colors in the camo itself. This is going to be part of the camo pattern, which means that you can be pretty fast and loose here. And the nice thing about painting camo, and I think the reason why I like doing it so much, is that it's really hard to actually make a mistake with camo, because you can always just go, oh, that color's part of the pattern. And it gives you a lot of leeway, which, as I'm sure anyone who's painted a model will tell you, you're going to make mistakes on your first couple passes, if not every pass you do. Mistakes happen. Trick is to not let those mistakes shut down and make you not want to paint. Ultimately, we bought these cool models. We want them to look, and they looked cool when they weren't painted. We want them to look cool when they are painted, and the way to do that is to just make it happen. And this, also, again, this is a hobby, so we're doing this for fun, which means we don't need to stress out about it. Alright, so, as you can see, guys, it's taking color. It's no longer a black blob. I don't know if the resolution on the camera is good enough, but you can come and see, and this guy's wearing gloves while firing his weapon. And I'm going to make those gloves brown as well, and that'll contrast nicely, or actually this will contrast as opposed to complement nicely the dark gray that his weapon's going to be. So we're just gonna get in here, we're gonna smack this. I am guilty of not changing brushes when I should. Like, I'm getting in here for some smaller detail. I really should go to a detail brush, but it's such a little amount, the paint's already on my brushes, so I'm just gonna use the brush I have. And then we're also going to go ahead and get the helmet. And I'm going to try to avoid, this guy's wearing goggles, I'm going to try to avoid getting the goggles with the brown. That's not so much because I don't want them to be brown, or the straps on the goggles to be brown, but I'm trying to avoid it not because it's a big problem. I'm just avoiding it because it'll be easier for me to find it when I get to the next the color that I actually want the brown to be. Alright, so as you can see, now we got he's brown, He's khaki and brown. His warrior is picked out. All that's still black is his weapon and his flesh and his goggles. The goggles and the weapon are going to be done in a dark gray, which we're going to get to. It's actually going to last. Also, this black point piece right here, that's his radio, so we're going to hit that with that same dark gray because the radio will be electronics black. But we got this brown out, we got some brown on a brush, so we're actually going to now start on doing our frog skin. So frog skin camo it's a 5-color camo that it is a khaki base, meaning that the color most prominent in the camo is this khaki. It uses 2 different browns, 2 different green, and then it uses 2 different browns and 2 different greens. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a smaller brush. This is a Monument Pro Synthetic X10. So same brush line. These guys are really cool, and they're really cool. They're relatively local. They're about their main source is center is about 4 hours from where I live, which is just like a weekend drive. And every now and then you just want to get out of town. So what we're going to do next for this is anywhere there's khaki, we're just going to take some medium-sized patches of this camo, of this brown. It's really important here is you need to do this with no pattern, and no pattern sounds really easy until you start doing it, because we tend to like patterns in the way we think as people. So you really just got to take your mind out of this. You can't be too close together, you can't be too far apart. There's no real thought. I kind of just go, yeah, it looks right. And we're just going to put these dots around. They need to be varying, you can be varying sizes, varying shapes. Again, really no pattern is what we're going for here. We just want to have a splattering of dots. And the reason why is, like I was saying earlier, the point of camo is to break up your silhouette, and frog skin camo, which came into service during World War II, was one of the earliest attempts at that. I'm sure these guys who know a lot more about the history of a given camo than I do. I just find it very interesting and neat, and I kind of based myself off of, I looked at it on Wikipedia, it looked really cool. I did a quick read through, and yeah, it'll work. So I'm a bit haphazard and a bit cavalier about the history of the camo. Like, these are ultra-modern U.S. Rangers. They really shouldn't be wearing this kind of camo because this is an outdated camo scheme. But it's cool, it's unique, or not unique, but it's something I don't see other people doing, and it definitely looks cool. So, now you can see, dude's just got a whole bunch of brown dots on his khaki. So he's wearing polka dots. That's super awesome, right? And what I'm using here is what's called a brush cleaner. This is Gentastic's Drunken Brush Group, also made by Monument Hobbies. It's soap for your brush. I'm trying to keep my brushes alive long past their expiration date. I've been using the same set of brushes for over a year now. So as you can see, this brush, its tip's starting to go, but it's still really usable for a lot of what I'm doing. So I'm just going to keep it in service until it's dead. So we want that brown to dry completely before we do the next layer of khaki on it, which, because it's thin brown, is probably already dry right now, but I'm going to take a break from that. Oh, the other cat has now decided that they want to be fed a second time. Again, we're ignoring them. Don't mind that crash. That's what cats do. So we're using a Monument Dark Neutral Gray. This is the darkest you're going to get without actually being black. I find it perfect for anything I actually want to be black, because if I prime something black and then I leave it painted and I just leave it the color of the primer, it will always look unpainted to me, even if I've gone and done stuff there. So I use this, and it's just a nice dark gray. It'll still read black, like it's not going to read like black as black, but it to me always just reads as if it's something that's black that's existing in the world without having to do a whole bunch of extra unnecessary highlights. So all the stuff that I've kind of earmarked to that are going to be black, I'm going to hit with this. So in this case, his goggles. the goggle band, and the gun, as well as his radio. So, as you can see, it's super easy. We haven't actually changed much. That was kind of one of those minor blink and you'll miss it steps. And clean our brush off again. And then we're going to get back into the camo. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use Secret Weapons Principality Jade. This is really tragic. Secret Weapon has gone under, so I'm slowly working through my last of my Secret Weapon paints. I find it quite tragic. They were one of the best paint companies around. Thankfully, Monument, who I'm slowly converting my paint to, is also really, really good. It's just that the colors I already liked and had planned for projects were made by Secret Weapon. But such is life. So this jade is a light green. It's an almost pastel, but not quite pastel. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing now that we got some jade on a brush. We're just going to go to the khaki and do random dips and dots around. So what's kind of neat at this point is you sort of want to ignore the brown dots we've already put on and put this on, and put the screen on its own random pattern. And the reason why is with Frogskin camo specifically and camo in general, the colors don't care about each other, and by that I mean it doesn't matter if this guy here, this dot, is partially touching that dot or is completely independent of that dot. We're just going to do it as if it's its own pattern. So we don't want to... One of the difficulties here, one of the things that you always want to do, and you need to fight that urge, is you're not painting the entire model. With this green, you're not covering up the khaki completely with this green. You are reducing the amount of khaki that's visible. So again, we're going to just follow that same methodology, do some dots around. These dots can be varying sizes, they can really be varying shapes. The only thing that's really important is that they don't have their own actual pattern. You just put them places, and to me it's always just, that feels right. Like, I stop when I feel like they feel right. So my eyes are kind of going, so it's hard for me to actually see this green next to the khaki, but that'll be fine. Other people, like, I know it's there. Other people with better eyes will see it, and it being a very close color to the khaki is just fine. So right now I'm just spinning through this model, and yeah, I feel like that's where we need to be. So typically I batch paint. I'm not batch painting because I'm doing this tutorial, but I do 4 to 6 guys at a time, and that would reduce the amount of paint that I'm wasting in my palette. But oh well, I'm sacrificing some paint to show this method and technique off because it's worth it. I think it's neat. I think more people should be doing stuff like this, so I want you guys to have it. So next we're going to do is a dark green, which is another Secret Weapon color. This is Principality Green. So this isn't quite a primary green or quite like a basic green. It's a little light. It's a little bit lighter than a straight green. But that's fine. What we need, we have a light green, we have a dark green, or a darker green. And we're going to do the same thing. Dots and dashes everywhere. We're just going to go through this, and as you can see, the khaki is starting to get covered up. This model is definitely starting to look a lot less khaki and brown. So we're just going to dig and dot our way through here. What's nice with this camo compared to some of the other schemes that I use is that I don't have to pay attention to where I've already done stuff. Like, for example, if you're doing a chocolate chip camo, you put your black dots down, and then you have to chase those black dots with white dots. We don't got to worry about any of that in this. We're just going to go where we want. We're going to put our dots where we feel like. Sometimes we'll cross the green, sometimes we'll cross the brown. Only thing that really matters is that we put dots everywhere. So As you can see, these steps are starting to go faster, and that's because so much of the khaki's already been used up. So much of the space that we have to work with is used up, and we still want to see that bottom layer. That means that we're slowly running out of space, which is perfect. That means that the model is approaching completion. So the next thing we're going to use is I want to use a dark brown, and actually what I found is this scale color African Shadow. So this is a dark brown, but it's got like almost a slight reddish hue to it, which I use if I want to use like if I want to do a really dark African, or actually mostly like an African skin tone. This is actually the perfect color for it. But it also works really well as giving me a dark brown, a third different shade of brown. That's gonna go through here, and we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna do some dots and dashes. And you can totally use any other brown with it. It's like this has got this sort of just a little bit of reddish purple that's in here, which I think just makes it stand out that much more. And again, we're just going to work our happy way through the model, going dot to dot and dash to dash. And like I said before, because so much of the model's already been covered with paint, this is going to be a really quick process because so much is already covered, and we don't want to lose too much of what we've already done. So you completely ignore what you've done in the past, but at the same time, you got to be aware of it. I know there's lots of what you just said, and yep, that's Camo. But it's super easy. We're just going to go until we feel like we got enough coverage, which give me a little bit there, a little bit there, and there. So that's actually the finished camo pattern. And as you can see, this dude is just covered in so many different colors of polka dot, but that's what we're going for. So all we got left to do is do some skin, and then we're going to do a base real quick, or hit the miniature's base itself real quick, which are both going to be super easy. So if you want to have a more pale Caucasian look, we can use some elf flesh. This is going to give it from War Pattern. But since I got the African Shadow on here, and the last handful of guys I did with this, that these going to go with, all have a more pale skin tone. I'm going to give him this, use this African Shadow again. And we're just going to go ahead and hit the exposed areas of skin. And what I found, and you're welcome to tell me I'm wrong, is that even though I'm using the exact same color that I used in the camo on his skin, that this large section of skin is completely different. It doesn't read the same as that section of camo, and that's because it's a large chunk of the same color, which isn't specifically trying to be broken up. But I like doing it this way because I like using different skin tones, and quite frankly, this particular paint is just a real nice paint. I enjoy working with it. So what we can see is that there's vents in the glove, which I've worn the gloves like this, where there's a nice big opening in the back of it. So we're going to make sure we go to that glove and just give it a little tag, show some skin coming through. Come in here and get the face. And then, depending on the model, I'll go and try to get the eyes and mouth. With this pose, I don't know that I can actually fit my brush in there to pick the eyes out cleanly, so I'm just not going to bother. Let the face just be that one single color. So there we go. We got a U.S. Ranger. He's in camo. He's got his war gear. That's all done. Last thing we're going to do is that guy needs a base, which this is the base model came with. It's just a black disc. I'm going to use this Vallejo earth texture. I really like this stuff. Currently, my local game store, War Room Games, carries this. Also, you can, like everything else where we get on Amazon. So I'm just going to use this big, ugly, messed up brush with these crap bristles. This is my dry brushing, base coating, and otherwise the brush works, so I'm going to use it brush. As you can tell from the damage on this brush, this is its primary function now. It's just putting this acrylic gel on. And I picked this because it's got this bright yellow, or this yellow khaki feel to it. And it's because these guys this whole thing's being set up for looking like it's in a desert. So I'm going to do that. I still have some stuff left over, so I'm just going to go smack a second base because I know I'm going to be painting some more of these guys. And if I do this now, then it's done. And this is just more me not wanting to waste material, which is why I tend to batch paint, because I don't have to waste stuff. So, did the extra brush. It goes in the water. And then, because I'm dissolving this in the water, I know that I'm going to have to clean this water out sooner rather than later. But, thankfully, I use lots of soap in the cleaning my brushes, which means that there's actually a lot of soap in that water, which helps clean the brushes up. Alright, so that's what we got. So right there, that is what we are doing. I'm going to call that a finished model. As soon as that base dries, I'm going to pop them off and glue it to it. And there you go.